Good evening, everyone. It's the Board of Education of School District 68 regular board meeting for January 27th. I will call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. It is with great respect and humility, we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Nanaimo people. The Nanaimo people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. Okay, and just a note, Chair McKay is feeling unwell tonight, and so is not able to join us. And we do send her good wishes for feeling better soon. And I ask everyone's generosity with me tonight because I did just find out somewhat recently that I will be chairing, and so I may be a little rusty. Okay. So we do not have, as far as I know, any transfer of items from to open. I will ask everyone, if you do want to be put on the speakers list, that please do indicate in the chat, and I will keep a speakers list. So rather than a raise of hands, just because I cannot see all the faces and areas for people. Okay, seeking if there's any additions, deletions, or changes to the order of the agenda. Seeing none, I will seek a motion for the approval of the agenda. So moved by Trustee Keller and seconded by Trustee O'Neill. Any opposition to the agenda as posted? Seeing none, the agenda is accepted. Number 7, seeking a motion for a approval of the minutes. Trustee Barron, a motion approval of the minutes. So the motion will read as, Trustee Barron, actually I'll get you to read that out and then I'll seek a seconder while you're speaking. I'm not sure if you have it on hand. Maybe you don't.
Sorry, I was scrambling for the buttons there. Yes,
Sorry to call you out. Do you want me to read it out?
Which section? 8.1? No.
7.
7, that the minutes from the regular board meeting held on December 16th, 2020 be adopted. Thank you, Chair.
So that was, sorry, I missed that. December 17th, 2020 is what you said?
Yes.
Right, sorry, I got surprised by calling you out and surprising you. Okay, and I see that's been seconded by Trustee Keller. Is there any opposition to adopting the minutes from December 16th, 2020? Seeing none. Okay, so moving on to section 8 and the section 72 bracket 3 report. Just going to move down on my agenda here. This is page 12. Okay, so this is the report of the closed meeting. No. Sorry, it's actually looks like page 13 on the agenda. Sorry, everyone. And so going to seek a motion that the section 72.3 report from the closed meetings on December 16th, 2020, January 6th, 2021, and January 12th, 2021 be received. Can I get a mover for that? Was that you, Trustee Berzovich, or was that from before?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Trustee Berzovich, seconded by Trustee Barron. Okay, so is there any opposition to passing this motion? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. Moving on to section 9. Just some announcements and reminders. We have an education committee meeting February the 3rd, a business committee meeting February the 10th, and our Board of Education meeting will be February 25th. We have a statutory holiday for Family Day where schools will be closed February 15th, and 2 non-instructional days in a row, February 11th and 12th. So schools will be closed on those days. Okay, we have nothing under number 10, but we have a number of correspondence to be addressed. So for number 11.1 from B. Kabalak, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence from B. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, Kabalak, to the board chair for response. Can I get is that moved by Trustee Wilkinson and seconded by Trustee O'Neill? Is there any opposition to this motion? Seeing none, we will accept the motion for the letter on airline admissions over schools. I'm now in the challenging position for the next letter because I was not going to be chairing this meeting, so I was going to recommend a different motion. That different motion that has been recommended in the agenda. So I cannot move a motion as chair, but with regards to this correspondence, I am going to seek willingness from my colleagues to put forward a different motion. Yes, I'm just going to see. I see there's a comment that I can hand over to chair. I think it's just be easier if I tell people, explain people why, and see if people are willing to move that motion. I would actually like the motion to read that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence from P. France to the board chair for response.
I would move that.
Okay, great. Thank you for moving that, Trustee Burbridge. Can I get a second? By Trustee O'Neill. Thank you very much. To seek your flexibility on this, although I'm not the mover, I'm going to explain my justification. We did talk about this as agenda setting, so I am remiss in this. Upon rereading the letter and upon an incident of driving my own children to school the other day, I wanted us to provide the letter writer with a bit more information about the process of road safety and who to actually communicate with around their needs. The other day, I was driving my son to school along Cedar Road, and there were 2 boys riding their bikes, and it was dark and it was rainy, and they had to weave in and out of traffic because there are no sidewalks. And so I had this realization that I could barely see these kids riding their bikes. And yet, because there was no sidewalks or no consistent lane along the shoulder, they were actually weaving, in and off the road. And I was struck by how incredibly dangerous that was. So I ask that we vote on the motion that I have proposed because I would like the letter writer to receive information about how to further this issue. As a member of this community, I see the importance of what they're saying, and I did see the risk that these 2 boys were experiencing that very day. So since it's been seconded, or well, moved and seconded, we will vote on the motion. Does anybody else want to speak in this motion? Seeing none, I will see if there's any opposition to the motion as I read out, which is different than what is in our agenda. Oh, sorry, Trustee Keller, did you want to speak?
If I may, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And my apologies. I am again having issues with Teams. I cannot raise my hand, so hopefully the chat is okay. So thank you. I think this is a good idea in terms of the motion. I can speak to the general context in the sense that there are challenges in rural areas with sidewalks and traffic safety around our schools. I have experience in working with these types of issues, and I think it's important that we take a strategic approach in how we address the issue. So I would welcome some thought being put into how we respond to the correspondence. So thank you. I support the motion.
Oops. Any other comments before we vote on the motion? And Trustee Keller, yeah, so Trustee Keller, it's fine. Please do indicate whether you want to speak in the chat. That's my preference. Trustee Barron, please ask your question.
Sorry. Having some issues with my buttons this evening. Apologies. I was getting a tea before, and so I apologize for the delay coming on. My question, I do appreciate the attentiveness to the details in this motion and the response to this correspondence. I'm just wondering whether it'd be more appropriate for us to request a response from staff than from the board chair, who may be able to provide more specifics around the details that we're hoping will be within this letter. And so I guess I do agree with not receiving and filing, but I do question whether it would be more appropriate for us to request a response from staff than from that of the chair.
Thank you, Trustee Barron. I'll give you some background information, just in the sense that we had this conversation over the previously voted on letter. And the reason that the board chair is responding to that one is to also ensure that that letter writer has the sufficient information to address their issue. So this is very much in line with that. I was just going to ask the chair to, indicate to whom they should actually direct their response to. So if that does not meet your needs, then you're welcome to recommend an amendment. That's good. Okay, thanks for the communication. Okay, any last questions before we vote on this motion? Okay, seeing none, is there any opposition to the motion as stated and moved, which is different than the agenda? Seeing no opposition, the motion is passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to 11.3, the ombudsperson, the province of British Columbia quarterly report. The motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer to the above correspondence from the ombudsperson to be received and filed. Can somebody move that motion if they're interested? Moved by Trustee Keller, seeking a second by Trustee Berzovich. Any questions? No? Okay. Is there any opposition to this motion? Seeing none, the motion is passed. Moving on to continued correspondence from the NDTA on 11.4 about the Ministry Framework for Enhancing Student Learning Policy statement. The motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence from the NDTA to the board chair for response. I'm going to seek a mover and a seconder, and then I see Trustee Higginson wants to comment. So moved by Trustee O'Neill, seconded by
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, that was Trustee Barron that actually reached me first. Trustee Higginson, you had a comment?
Thank you. Just in the, I think it's an important piece of information that we make sure the public is aware that we don't use standardized testing. It's not part of the BC curriculum, but also just for the board chair to note that there was the ministry did utilize quite an intense consultation process on this, and from the very beginning there was a member of their provincial association from the BCTF as part of so I think it's important information to be included in the letter that there has been teacher input into it, and that our job now at the local level is to take this order and implement it locally. So that's what we'll do locally, but there has been teacher input. So. Okay. I think those are two pieces of important information for the letter. Thank you.
Okay, I see a point of order if you'll, oh wait, never mind, it's been removed. Just to be clear, it is not me that will be writing the letter, it's the board chair, not the chair of the current meeting. So we can pass that on to the board chair. Any other comments? Thank you, Trustee Higginson. Okay, any opposition to passing this motion? Seeing none, the motion is passed. Moving on to the next correspondence from S. Nixon about Build Seamless Childcare. The motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence from S. Nixon to be received and filed. Moved by Trustee Keller. Seconded by Trustee Wilkinson. Thank you very much. Any opposition to this motion? Seeing none, the motion is passed. Last piece of correspondence, 11.6 from Nanaimo First Nation. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence from Nanaimo First Nation to the board chair for response. Can I get a mover on that? Trustee O'Neill. Seconder? By Trustee Wilkinson. Thank you very much. Is there any questions? Okay, I'll move to any opposition on this. Seeing none, the motion has passed and we're now through the correspondence. There are no motions or reports coming from Business Committee nor Education Committee. So I believe that we can move through section 12 without any further ado on to section 13 with Superintendent Saywell and Director of Instruction Ted Cadwallader for the Ministry Performance Data on Completion Rates.
Great, thanks very much. Good evening, everybody. So, Ms. Matthews, could you put up that PowerPoint, please? Thanks. Just before we left for Christmas break, we received from the Ministry of Education our grad rates for the 2019-2020 school year. And so I have Mr. Cadwallader here with me this evening, Director of Instruction for Indigenous Learning and Student Data. And we wanted to share those grad rates with you. Next slide, please. To begin with, though, I wanted to provide a little context by providing a little bit of information about some of the features of our community. A good way to do that is through the EDI, which is the Early Development Instrument. Now, I've brought this to the board in the past. This is what they call Wave 7. So this is a 2019 data. They started this, this questionnaire, which is a questionnaire. There's 103 questions and in 5 core areas of early childhood development. And these are known to be good predictors of adult health, education, and social outcomes. So this is what they call Wave 7. So this is information from last year. And the questions are about physical health and well-being, language and cognitive development, social competence, emotional maturity, communication skills, and general knowledge. So what you can see on the screen here is kind of a vulnerability scale with the dark color at the top where it says 45% to 100% vulnerability. So if it's 45%, that means that 45% of that population of children are vulnerable in those 5 areas. So if you look at the map here of BC that has all the school district labeled, and you'll see school district 68 in kind of an orange color. which is somewhere between 35 and 40%. And some other places in the province are also orange as well. You'll see on the west coast of Vancouver Island, School District 84, which is that dark sort of burgundy color. You don't see that anywhere else. That is a very vulnerable population. So what this identifies is that, and this is, by the way, you can find this online. This is an interactive map that you can drill in deeper. And so, again, this is just an indication provincially, a broad measure of vulnerability. So next slide, please. If we do drill in a little bit deeper, you'll see, again, some of the school districts you couldn't see before. And here's SD 68. It also shows neighborhoods with each community. So on that larger map, you might have noticed that Revelstoke, as an example, School District 19 is almost white. SD 45 on this graph, which is West Vancouver, is also mostly white. So under 15% vulnerability. So let's drill in one more time into School District 68. And this allows us to look at the neighborhoods within the school district. Next slide, please. And so you can see here some vulnerability rates that are among the highest in the province. So I mentioned Vancouver Island West School District as perhaps the most vulnerable population. It's a very small school district with a very high population of Indigenous students in that area. And that is typical to show vulnerability. So you can see here, these numbers are very high. Again, some of the highest in the province in the Cedar, Gabriola, South Wellington area, but also high vulnerability in areas of South Nanaimo, Townsite and downtown, 47 and 46% vulnerability. And North Nanaimo, you can see, by Nanaimo standards, this is where the property values are high in our area, but still quite high vulnerability of 40%. So that's just a little information about the context with which we live and work. And a good argument, a very good argument to suggest that children from poor backgrounds face many obstacles to accessing education, right? So these include not having educational organization to attend and not having access to educational materials or teachers at some point. But even when these are in place, children living in poverty usually do not have their basic needs met. And so, as trustees are aware, issues around food security are a big concern in Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools. So there's a little context. Next slide, please. And I'll ask Mr. Cadwallader to talk a little bit about our grad rates.
Thank you, Superintendent Saywell. I was looking at that EDI data earlier, and it's not only used for education, of course, but it's used for government to make decisions about allocation of resources of all kinds. But what we use it for is looking at our students who are coming into our school system and how we might respond like the government does in allocating our resources. And we've brought presentations to you before over the years and shown you the data from these different schools who are in these areas and talk to you about some of the ways that we allocate those resources, focus schools being one example. Each year, we also receive this from the Ministry of Education, as the superintendent says. We've got this document pops up on our shared drive that we have with the ministry. It looks at 5 years worth of data, compares where we're going. Down the left-hand side, you can see demographics for the last 5 years from each of those groups. So we have all students at the top, residents, you can see female, male, Indigenous, English language learners, and students with special needs designations. Across the top, there's 3 measurements as well. There's a 6-year completion rate, And that's the currency that the ministry uses to do its announcements around graduation rates. We've got eligible grade 12 graduation rate and first time grade 12 graduation rate. We don't use those a lot. They're of interest to us to make sure that students who are getting to grade 12 in the 5 years that they get there, that they're prepared and ready to graduate. We look at some honors graduates in there too, making sure that we're comparable to what we've had in the past or improving and comparable to other districts of our size around the province. The explanation you can see on the bottom of that sheet between each of those three categories across the top. And so we've highlighted on the right-hand side the residents graduation rate, which is what the ministry uses. We're at 83.8, our Indigenous graduation rate, 6-year completion rate, 67.8. English language learners, 77.8, and our special needs completion rates at 65.8. And you can also compare those on this sheet to the previous 5 years. Next slide, please, Karen. So highlighting from that sheet, out of the 6-year completion rate comparison, you can see that compared from 2018 to 19, we've gained in 3 of those demographics and dropped slightly with our Indigenous graduation rates, 69.2 to 67.8. So I'll just leave that there for a second so folks can have a quick look. And then we'll go to the next slide, please, Karen. Another way that the ministry provides us information on completion rates, and this site also shows FSA rates, it shows transition rates from grade to grade, but this is a public site, so you can see it up there, studentsuccess.gov.bc.ca. A number of years ago, the ministry moved to a more interactive way of looking at the data, so bringing students or bringing the public in, and rather than providing PDF forms for people to download and have a look at, they've presented it through this format. And so this particular document shows completion rates for BC and completion rates for Nlps on the bottom of that. Same demographics as we saw on previous sheets, but one of the things that this looks at is a typical range across BC. So the middle 50% is that gray area, and then in there is a slider. So there's a range of school district results over time. So if you look at BC, you can see those sliders are on the far right edge of that line, of that range. And so what that tells us is over the past 5 years, of all of those demographics down the left-hand side, that's the best results the province has seen. So if it was on the left-hand side of that slider, it would mean that those are the lowest in the last 5 years that the province had seen. So it shows that the province is trending very well in the completion rates for those demographics. And if you look at our completion rates for Nlps, you can see that we're also trending to the far right edge of each of those demographics. So we've moved along those for the last number of years. And if you're interested, you can have a look on studentsuccess.gov.bc.ca, and you can see where we were over previous years and compare those as well to where we're moving. But it looks like we're trending in the right direction with our completion rates. Now, it'd be important for me to note at this time that our completion rates don't appear this year. And last year, suddenly in grade 12, their students are graduating. They're the compilation of a dozen years of work by many of our parents, our families, our teachers and support staff, our staff across the school district who are invested in helping those students get successfully to grade 12 with options to succeed after they leave us in Nlps. And next slide, please, Karen. This is a project that we've taken on over the last 5 years, or sorry, the last 3 years. And so we, as I mentioned, don't want to be surprised by our graduation rates, and particularly with students who we've prioritized their success. And so 3 years ago, December 2018, we asked ourselves how our Indigenous students doing on their path to graduation, kindergarten to grade 12. And we asked teachers just to tell us whether they were very concerned that the student was not on that path, somewhat concerned, or had no worries that the student was well on their way. So we started that off in December of 2018. We did it again in 2019, and we collected it again in the December just previous. What this starts to tell us is that we're able to look 10 years into the future, 12 years into the future, and that would be our graduation rate for our kindergartens. In this particular graph you see here, for December of last year, grade 12s, they've graduated, but the grade 11s are our grade 12s Indigenous students this year. So it's a project that we've taken on. We know who each of those students are in those categories, and we have discussions with our principals at the schools, and we look for ways to support those students on their path to graduation. So again, they're not always relying on the ministry to send us that information, but seeking out ways that we can gather that information to inform ourselves along the way. With that, I'll turn it back to our superintendent for any questions.
We actually do have Trustee Barron who has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I actually just had a quick question in relation to one of the first slides that you showed Superintendent Saywell around the areas of vulnerability within British Columbia and within Nanaimo Ladysmith area. And I'm wondering if you could please remind us, you had mentioned poverty and the importance of food security. I'm wondering if you know right offhand what factors were used in determining those levels of vulnerability. And if not, I'd be happy to get that information another time.
Yes, sorry. So at the, just find that information again. I gave the 5 core areas of vulnerability at the beginning. If you just let me find that information, I'll answer that question in a minute.
Thank you. To clarify, if I could through the chair, is that a page in our agenda, Superintendent, that we could reference that you're looking for?
No, it's on the EDI information that I shared. Just again, give me 1 second. We could move on to another question while I get that information.
Okay. Sorry. Trustee Higginson next. I don't know. Oh, never mind. You found it. Okay.
I found it quick. Yeah, sorry, took a second. So those 5 areas are physical health and well-being, language and cognitive development, social competence, emotional maturity, communication skills, and general knowledge.
Did you want to follow up, Trustee Barron?
No, thank you. I appreciate, vulnerability is a big concept. And so to understand what were the factors that were used in determining those levels of vulnerability were important in my mind. So I thank you for that information. Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Higginson is the next stop.
Thanks. Excuse me. It's really interesting to see that EDI data developing over time. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember when we first started using it, it's become much more in depth and much more rich. It makes me wonder if it warrants a conversation to bring back about the MDI, but that's not my question. I always try to get like multiple points in, you guys. So my question actually is, first off, I just want to say on page 35, it's it's really encouraging to see the movement of all of our completion rates in the right direction for the most part. And so what I'm wondering about though is what we've noticed about students who graduated last year and the impacts that the extended absence from school had. And if we're hearing from folks, if they graduated last year, if they're feeling ready, as a result of what happened last year?
Yeah, through.
Yeah, if I, do you want me to start on that through the chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, we don't have specific data yet on how those students are doing. It's just anecdotally, and I'll share one most recently that I was in a meeting with one of our community representatives who said that it's been really difficult because our post-secondaries are operating in an online environment as well, and so it's been grueling. We've had interviews to bring people on as employees in a number of places, and also I've interviewed them while they're going to school, and some of them have said, well, I decided to not go to university this year because it was just so hard to be online for that amount of time. And we've also heard reports from other community members who've said, you know, of the students that live in her community that graduated last year, the majority of them are doing nothing. They graduated, but they're not going to post-secondary because they just don't see that as a viable alternative, being online all day after having done that last year. So, but we don't have data pointing towards that yet. But we are monitoring some of that through that Red, Yellow, Green project, and we do see some indications, but not yet at the grade 12 level.
Well, maybe I'll jump in. That's a really great answer. I had similar stories of students who had put it off for a year. I know students are challenged to working online, all manner of, social and emotional difficulties, isolation, and so it's really hard to determine what impact, they had in our system going on to the next system. My sample size of one, my daughter's at VIU working online as well. So it's a really challenging proposition for a lot of kids.
Can I have a follow-up, Chair? So my follow-up is more of a comment, just that, with this new framework, one of the measures is attendance in a post-secondary, like movement on to post-secondary. And I think it's really important for us to flag these things in this time when we're looking at these measures that have been imposed on us for the, better or worse, that this is these next couple of years, I think, are going to be quite exceptional when it comes to post-secondary, and we should remember that for our own data analysis, especially as board members. But it's also maybe something for us to keep in mind in terms of being a pilot with the framework, reminding them in our cycle of feedback to them that maybe this isn't the best measure for the next couple of years. It's just a thought.
Through the chair, can I just mention that we do collect that data because over the last number of years we've used the personal education number to track those students into grade 12, and so the ministry does provide us a dashboard that shows where our students go. I've shared it briefly with this board last year, and we'll do that again when it comes available from the ministry.
Thank you. Trustee Keller is next.
Yes, thank you. Question to Mr. Cadwallader through the chair. Just referring back to your slide that showed the red, I think we could refer to it as the red, yellow, green project where we're tracking completion rates. Great work. I think this is has a lot of potential, and I'm wondering if maybe this is a bit too big to ask at this point, but is this being used, this data, in order to identify interventions for at an individual student level early on so that we can increase their chances of graduation?
Partly, but we have other data sets that we are using. What this allowed us to do was answer the question, just how are Indigenous students doing kindergarten to grade 12? Last year, with the collection of data we did, I did visit a number of schools because I aggregated it into zones. So all of the feeder schools for Dover Secondary, or all of the feeder schools for NDSS, or all the feeder schools for Ladysmith Secondary School. I've compiled those there as well. What I've used it for mostly is having direct conversations with Nanaimo, Snanawas, and Jaminas First Nation, because I aggregate those students out of that data, and I'm able to have conversations about how we're doing to support those particular students. But you did see how that I've compiled it for the whole district. So we can have that conversation around how are we doing. It does match up quite well with the other data sets that we have, so that we do have the opportunity to intervene. But so mostly it's used for validation purposes, because we do know who those students are and we know how those schools are doing, and that's why we put the interventions in place that we have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cadwalder.
Thank you. And Trustee O'Neill.
That was not a question, that was a suggestion earlier. We were looking for information. Sorry about that.
Okay, well then I have myself on the list. So like Trustee Higginson, I do note the upward indicators of increasing rates over time, and I think that's great. I mean, that's what we're hoping for. But I do have some questions. One, I just want to note, I mean, it's not that I have a question around this, it's just, it needs to be said, which is, and I know that the school district is already on this, but as a trustee, I need to kind of publicly acknowledge that the rates for special needs students, or I'm going to call them complex learners, or, and Indigenous students, I know we know this, but it remains low, and this is obviously something that needs further attention. And I know that it's not a criticism. I just feel like, yes, we need to acknowledge that. But I do wonder, with regards to the, for example, the indicators of vulnerability, and the EDI is great, or whatever we use. I'm really glad to have that part of our story, and I'm wondering if it's possible to have that be part of our, whether it's a district review story. We've talked a little bit about the framework for enhancing student learning. We had a letter from the NDTA. There are concerns, right, that it doesn't really present a fully accurate picture of our students and the contributing factors about their outcomes and our education quality in this district. And so I'm wondering if there's a way that we can include something like the EDI, a measure of vulnerability, a measure of poverty, whatever is deemed best. If we can somehow have some form of data, like a correlation between vulnerability and graduation rates, or multiple correlation, regression, whatever it is that we deem appropriate. I'm wondering if we can somehow show the relationship between vulnerability and outcomes as a way of addressing the issue that using these graduation rates or these kind of snapshot pieces of information is an incomplete story and not an accurate reflection of the great work that's happening in our district. Was my question clear? Should I be like, okay? Well, can we somehow have a correlational based or statistic that we can use to show the relationship between vulnerability and outcomes?
Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you. That's a very good question. It's also a really large scale kind of research project that's based on a lot of socioeconomic indicators and all sorts of social health indicators. We believe, I think, that it doesn't matter where a student comes from, that whether they come from poverty, whether those vulnerabilities are there, we believe that we can make a difference in their lives, and we believe that they can graduate. And so, though there may be correlations between that we can look at, and I'm sure there's research that would help us make those links, I think we can, we believe so much in ourselves and in our school district that we can overcome any of those.
Thank you. Superintendent Saywell, did you want to respond as well, or?
Yeah, very similar sort of answer. Yeah, I mean, it's, Trustee Stanley, it's why we sort of provide that information to provide a context. But as Mr. Cadwalder said, our our thinking is that we can overcome those issues, and you know, we do. And so, you know, things like we concentrate a lot on collective teacher efficacy, right? So teachers working together who believe that every single student can succeed has high outcomes for students. So I appreciate what you're saying, and it's exactly why we share that information with the board. So, you know, we know the context.
And I'm going to take my own follow-up. I actually highly respect your priorities there, which is focusing on the work that we can do and the meaning that we have in students' lives. I agree. However, I will tell you that I got very mad when I went on the ministry's website and I saw how they just had the data by district, and that to me portrays our school district inaccurately, and that's where I got mad, because it doesn't indicate what great work we do in this district. It doesn't indicate the support that we do to lift those students up, yet it is used as a measure to compare, or potentially used as a measure to compare districts, and I'm worried that that is undermining to confidence in our system and to staff, and you know, like, and you know, the like, you know, to the overall kind of sense of what we're doing. I know we're doing good work. I know you know we're doing good work. I just want everybody else to like to sing it from the hills, and that's where I was hoping that we could somehow tell that aspect of the story in a numbers way. Yeah, I just am feeling a little protective.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, I have to comment a little bit, and I'll pick on West Van again. They know they're going to graduate 99% of their students this year, the next year, and the following year. And so, you know, I haven't brought up John Hattie's effect sizes in a long time, but, you know, we know students that are going to struggle right from, we see the first day in kindergarten. They're children who are new to our country. They're children from low socioeconomic situations, and they're Indigenous children. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And they just don't have the same issues in West Van that we have. So we are trending in the right direction. And so that's what, you know, I know people like Ted and the Learning Services team and myself, that's what we concentrate on, that we're improving every single year. And, you know, we went back a little bit in grad rate, and it's already been said that, you know, grad rates don't share the full story of our success, but we know that COVID has disproportionately affected students from low socioeconomic situations, and we went down a little bit with our Indigenous students in grad rate. And it is, albeit one of the key indicators of future success. So we have to get our students through to graduation. So yeah, I often use, you know, West Van as they have different issues there, different problems in West Van, but one of them is not getting kids to graduation.
Right. And I do understand that coming from North Vancouver and seeing it, like seeing the differences in the school districts. I will say that sometimes I feel like this is more a measure. The comparison is of the failure of the ministry to support equity among school districts and student outcomes than it is a measure of success in a district. So perhaps I shouldn't have said that. I will move on to Trustee Higginson.
There we go. Thanks, Trustee Stanley. So I think you've just kind of hit on the heart of the conversation, that as a board and, you know, like sort of senior team with our senior leadership is important for us to have, because while the framework says you must report on these measures to us, they don't say these are the only measures that you report on. They allow you to report on however many measures you want. And I think some of the things that you talked about that are unique to Nanaimo Ladysmith are some of the really good dig in and roll up our sleeves questions that we need to start asking, how do we reflect these things in our own? It's like, I like that we've chosen district review story. I don't know what the ministry title is, report, end of year, or whatever, but we've called it a review story because we have a story to tell, but we're not limited just to those measures. And so what are measures that reflect the story of Nanaimo Ladysmith, and how do we include those in our story? And, you know, to your point about the ministry website, this is why we are here. This, right at the very heart of what you're talking about, is why local boards exist, because only we know the context of our students and their learning and the needs of our community. And so that's why it's important that local boards exist, to make sure that there are champions locally that know what the school district needs in order to allow the students that live within the school and the students that we serve to succeed. And so I'm actually really looking forward to us having this conversation, because we're not limited just to those numbers that are in the ministry reports. But I will also say, in terms of those numbers, something that I think is very important, and I've said it before, you know, having been part of that framework advisory committee for the good and the bad and the, you know, all the lots of difficult conversations, one of the things that I was really struck by was how important that data that the ministry is asking for is to FNESC in their advocacy for students who live on reserve and are going to public schools. That is key data for them. And one of the reasons why the framework came about is because advocates like places like Inclusion BC and FNESC and the Representative for Children and Youth found that when everybody went to their own reporting method, it was very difficult for them to get access to that data. And these are the folks that are doing some of the most important advocacy work for the students provincially. So it was an eye-opener for me about how important that data is to those associations, but I'm really looking forward to the board developing those measures together, Trustee Stanley, that you talked about with our senior team, because that is at the very heart of why we are here.
Perhaps it was good that I couldn't unmute myself, because I would be very excited about everything that Trustee Higgins had said and agree wholeheartedly, not surprisingly. Any other trustee comments or questions? Alrighty, I thank staff for that report. I mean, it's the core of the work that we do, and, you know, success for all. And so thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Superintendent Saywell's operation plan update.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Ms. Matthews, if I could get you to put up the slideshow presentation. So I wanted to provide a little background before I turn it over to the different departments to provide their department update on the operational plan. Of course, in November 2018, the board embarked on this process to develop a strategic plan. We adopted that plan in September 2019. Staff took a couple months after that to develop an operational plan, which we presented for the first time in January of 2019. And then COVID hit us in March. So, as a quick review, strategic plans ours is a 4-year plan that we renew annually. It really has 4 components divided into trustee work and staff work. So goals and objectives are the work of trustees, and strategies and indicators of success, which you'll see today in the operational plan, are the work of staff. Next slide, please. So, not so many years ago, in some organizations, including school districts, this is how we felt about strategic plans and operational plans. We did it. We sent it into the ministry. It sat on a shelf. And I could say that about school plans as well years ago. You know, we did them to appease the Ministry of Education. Then, you know, about 5 or 6 years ago, we adopted this idea of the framework for enhancing student learning. So we stopped handing in accountability contracts to the ministry, and we started delivering a report that we called the district review story and school review stories as well to our community. And that felt better. That made the plans real, and is not something that sat on the shelf, but something that was malleable, right? That we were able to change to meet the emerging needs of our district, and it was a living, breathing document. This operational plan is a living, breathing document. It is not complete today. It'll never be complete. It is malleable. But what has happened recently, of course, is COVID, but sometimes it's about changes in collective agreements. We might face a decline in enrollment or some other issues around resourcing schools and school districts, and that would also have a change in our operational plan. Next slide, please. So we're going to present to you the change in the operational plan, but before we went there, I spoke to the idea of strategies and indicators of success, which we will talk about today. And I thought I'd bring out this slide, which is a ministry document that shows some of the data that we use as indicators of success. So this is in your package, and I'll just do this very quickly. This is, as you can see, highlighted in 3 different colors. Blue is the distribution of ministry data. So this is all the data that we that we share with the ministry, and they put it together. And well, we just had grad rates, and they give it back to us. So grad rates typically come around December, although it says on this one, the 6-year completion rate is way over here on the right in June. They're supposed to get it to us in June, but it's usually in the following year, and this year it was a little bit late. So all of these are pieces of data that we get from the ministry in blue, and you can go through those. Administration of assessments that we do to get some of that data are all in that orange color. So you can see on the left, FSA, the administration period, the literacy 12, literacy 10, and numeracy assessments, and so on. Oh, the last one really is that's the student success or student learning survey now that we'll be handing out from January to April. And then finally, part of that framework for enhancing student learning is financial reporting. And so you can see the different areas where the district annual budget goes to the ministry in June. School district enrollment projections you can see in February. The green part there will go to the ministry. So those are all the sort of points of data entry and the data that we receive back from the ministry, which is, again, all part of that framework for enhancing student learning. Next slide, please. Now, on to department reports. So these are really quick reports. Again, all of this is in your package, so I've asked each department to do just a quick overview and a little bit on each of their parts of the operational plan. So over to you, Human Resources.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So as Superintendent Saywell has just mentioned, that now that we have a couple of years under our belt with this operational plan, we really have had some chance to test it out, and we realize that as he said, it really is a living document because of our shifting of priorities. I think last year being a really good example. And then the more we work with it, we also realize that, maybe there are some gaps from when we originally formulated this. So in HR, we've made a couple of slight revisions to reflect the 2 main areas of HR, and that's there's a people side to HR, and then there's the technical side to HR. And it may be a little counterintuitive, but the two are not mutually exclusive. For example, occupational health and safety, this is just one example, is structured on a multitude of technical and legal compliance requirements. However, we know that having a safe workplace for our staff is really important. So with this in mind, we've kind of altered the HR operations in this plan to encompass three main strategies. I'm just going to touch really highly on them. Now, the one I want to talk about is kind of what I was just talking about with the technical side, and that is to develop and orchestrate viable HR systems, processes, and guidelines. And again, this is sort of the legal, the technical, and process side of HR. The desired outcome here is to be legally compliant, as well as offering, user-friendly systems, processes, and information. And so you might wonder, why is this strategy under employee engagement? And I have to quote our QP union president, Mr. Rob Zavir, on this. About a couple of years ago, Rob and I were kind of talking about this. And he said to me, when our staff feel safe and secure, and they don't have to worry about the structural types of issues, they can concentrate on doing their jobs, which means students ultimately benefit. And I really thought that captured, the sentiment and the importance of having viable systems and processes and creating that security for our staff. And then also just to indicate that this area of, the legal compliance and so forth does mitigate, risk to the organization. So this is a new strategy, that's an area where we found there was a gap and we wanted to include it in this revision. And I just want to say also that the reason that we've used the word orchestrate is because it really is, I think, in a well-functioning organization like an orchestra coming together, in that a number of these strategies are driven out of HR, but they're really always in partnership with our key stakeholders, our leaders and the other departments. So they're really delivered and disseminated in a much broader fashion. The strategy to build leadership capacity for all managers and staff. So this is just a slight tweak from the last operational plan. And of course, the tweak is, we had referred to it in the past as focusing on our Leaders Learning Series. However, we have a multi-pronged approach to leadership development at many levels. And so we wanted to modify this strategy so that it's not just limited to the Leaders Learning Series. That more accurately reflects, the reality of what we do. And then lastly, and this again is a strategy that we had in our last operational plan, or original one, and this is about, having to focus on strategies for our difficult to fill positions. Now, we do a huge amount of recruitment, and that will continue, but we want to keep this as a priority highlighted so that we continue to address with different types of strategies many of our positions that we are, that we want to make sure that we're on top of. So, as I mentioned, these strategies are not only reflect the work that are done by the HR, but also through key stakeholders across the organization, and much of that filters through our principals, our vice principals, and all of our management staff. Just to give you a really quick update since our last update, which was a couple of months ago. Not a lot has changed. We continue to be stable since we got back after Christmas. Absence rates generally remain on par from last year. So we watching Assistant Secretary Treasurer Hambley and myself are watching those absence rates all the time, and there's no major trends to show that we are experiencing something different. We have continued to have good success in backfilling our any teacher absences. And again, based on what the indicators that we might see around feedback from our union partners and from our leaders, we believe overall staff are doing really well. And so on a final note, I just wanted to highlight that we did have one event just on January 7th, and this was a leadership development event for all of our management staff and our principals and vice principals. And we brought in Marley Rusin, who many of you will be familiar with. Marley is renowned for her expertise and applications around respectful workplace and bullying and harassment. And Marley put on a great session around how to model and manage respectful workplaces. And so following that session, we had some really great feedback from some of the participants who indicated that it was it caused them to do some self-reflecting, and on some managers who were having productive conversations with their staff. So this is a kind of leadership development that we plan on continuing, and we have some plans even for trying to get some more of these types of sessions in by the end of this year. So that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Trick. I do have a question that is for you specifically, so I'm going to take questions from Ms. Trick's presentation at this time, and I will do that for each of the presenters, and then general operating plan questions we'll save till the end. So if anyone has a question for Ms. Trick now, I believe Trustee Brzovic does.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Trick, how has, I mean, I know that your recruitment methods will have changed. You must be using more online methods and that. What's the impact on the amount of time it's taking to do the recruitment work? COVID, I mean, specifically.
Through the chair, that's a great question. Well, it's interesting around if we're not doing, you're absolutely correct. All of our interviews are being done online. So there might be some workload that's reduced from that because, for example, you may not be having to coordinate room bookings and some of those activities that actually do when you have a lot of recruitment going on, that adds up to time. So I don't, in terms of the amount of time and effort, I'm not sure that has altered a lot. I think that we're finding the online recruitment is effective, and it also may save, if you're interviewing out-of-town candidates, it may save them from having to travel, and there's a time saver there. So through the chair, we have District Principal Lisa Robinson here tonight, and if I would just like to ask Lisa to comment on if to Trustee Brozovic's question, if Lisa, you've seen any sort of changes from your perspective with the online recruiting. Lisa, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had the microphone off. Good evening, everyone. In terms of recruiting and just the time we're in regarding COVID, there really is very little change. In fact, Teams has been an incredible asset. Like Patricia was saying, we're able to organize orientations, interviews, presentations. So we're really moving along quite effectively. Did that answer your question?
You're muted, Trustee Brzovic.
My apologies. Yes, yes, it does. Yeah, I guess if I'd have a follow-up, I would just ask: are the numbers of people? How are our numbers in terms of people applying? Are they? Would you say they're in line with what they would have been this time last year?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just ticking along.
Thank you very much. Sorry, my mute just spontaneously muted. I won't take it personally. Any other questions for Ms. Trick or Ms. Robinson before we move on to the operations and facilities presentation? No? Okay, I will let operations and facilities have their moment in the sun.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Board. I will present briefly for operations and facilities, and we have staff on hand to answer any questions that might come of the presentation. So the slides and Superintendent Saywell's information sheet highlight a couple of the changes and focuses that operations and facilities have done to align a little bit more purposefully and focused on the board's specific objectives. And so one of them is the example of the ambitious target of meeting lowering emissions, GHG emissions of 4.5% per year. And as we've spoken to the board before, it is ambitious. It's going to be difficult to meet without significant investments. Unfortunately, of course, electrifying our systems is an expensive process to proceed, but we've done a number of operational strategies in order to meet these goals. And so one, of course, is pushing for major capital upgrades, and we've been relatively successful in that regard. Over the years, we've upgraded old oil boilers, etc., to typically to natural gas, and now we're moving to electrification, which will have an even bigger impact on GHG emissions over time. Converting our bus fleet to electric, we've already been successful in getting 2 buses. We're applying for more. You'll note on this slide, it does indicate that the provincial targets at this point, when we do report out, don't necessarily include that, but certainly at a local level, we do look at that. And the other thing we're doing is we're seeking the finance department to start assisting us in trying to source equipment, smaller equipment and infrastructure that will have the impact of lowering GHG emissions. And you'll see in the graph on the side, we've done relatively well. And of course, I think school closure has a little bit to do with the decrease in emissions, as well as increased use of high efficiency bulbs, changes to boiler systems, etc. So just some strategies that are there for us, and we'll continue to focus on that. Mr. Lumsden and Mr. Saywell worked very hard, and we have plans when funds become available to throw at projects to address the issue. And of course, this year the board supported additional investments to meet these targets. Secondly, we've had a bit more of a specific strategy with respect to enhancing our seismic and school upgrades. And so again, we're focusing heavily on trying to get our seismic program going. You see this year we were successful in receiving funds to upgrade 2 of our facilities. We're hoping that we're going to continue on that pace of 2 a year, which may be a little optimistic, one at minimum, certainly. The boards continue to support the access to technology, so the Wi-Fi program, and we've been getting some positive feedback from schools where that's at. And one of the other things that we've been really trying to do is that, we live in a system where we often are conservative in the way that we spend because we're worried that money may not be there to support some of our things in future years. But if the board has earmarked money for technology or for environmental upgrades, etc., we're really pushing our staff to move forward in that way, and we've done very well in that regard. And again, another shift here is COVID-19 safety. And so here's a picture of a few folks getting ready to install mechanical ventilation for one of our portables. And so what we're doing, of course, is upgrading all of our buildings. We've got 2 left. One is we anticipate approval at Solaire, and we're still looking for Ladysmith Intermediate to be fully have mechanical ventilation that can handle high quality filters. And then again, in portables, we're working very hard as well. Just briefly on this one, I want to be clear that this isn't data that we actually share out, but the idea is we're trying to build in-school available tools for teachers to be able to use to understand where their students are at. And then finally, here's just an example where we're at with our IT infrastructure. So you'll see we didn't use yellow or red, yellow, and green. We just used green, green, and green to show where we are on this path. And so this again is is us putting forward the board's vision of equity across our schools with respect to accessibility to technology. And so, you know, 4 totally complete. Dover should be in the green very soon. I was at Barsby today. We're getting there, and so we're moving forward. The planning is well underway, and we're losing. So we've got a couple of champions with respect to this program, Mr. Merchant in IT and Mr. Lumsden in facilities, and Mr. Lumsden is making sure that this work is all going to be planned out, hopefully by spring break, but obviously it'll take a number of years to actually install the work. So overall, what we've tried to do in operations is obviously our sole mission is to support students, teachers, and principals in schools and the board's goals. And so these are some programs that we're going to be able to report year in, year out on our progress. And particularly with this slide, hopefully in 3 years' time, perhaps in 4 years' time, we won't be reporting anymore because it'll be finished. So I just want to again express the appreciation for the work that various departments are doing, and finance supporting them both. You know, and IT again trying to respond to the demands and needs of school-based folks for the tools that they need for their kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Walsh. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Trustee Higginson?
Thank you. You know, I don't have any specific questions, but I just want to give, you know, commend the facilities team for the tremendous efforts. Sometimes people, you know, like it's not the sexiest thing, but there's a tremendous amount of work happening with our facilities department, particularly around our seismic upgrades and, you know, the technology and infrastructure that it takes. Sometimes people forget how intense it is. And so I just would like to, you know, I appreciate all the information that was in the report. It was thorough. I don't have a lot of questions from it, but I didn't want to, you know, take this. I find this forum very difficult this evening for some reason. I'm feeling, I think, maybe a bit zoomed out. But I'm really appreciative for the efforts that went into this report. And I think it's really good information for our community as well, because capital is one of the things that we get one of the big, it's shockingly, it's one of the things that people ask us the most about. Thank you.
And if there's no other comments, I too will share my gratitude with regards to the greenhouse, and other trustees are echoing in the chat, just so if anyone's watching can know that people are echoing Trustee Higginson's comments. But I just want to also share the gratitude of from the respect of shouldering the climate change action with regards to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. This is a facilities thing. And so the board has set out a bold target, one that does meet the needs based on the scientific data. But I do appreciate the efforts that are put into this, you know, turning the ship around with regards to our greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you very much for my children and my children's children. I believe we're moving on now to the Department of Learning Services presentation.
Madam Chair, thank you. And it's my pleasure to be presenting information this evening regarding the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning Operational Plan on behalf of the Nanaimo Public Schools Department of Learning Services. I just want to point out also joining me online this evening and available to answer any questions at the end of this brief presentation that you might have, our Assistant Superintendents Belcom and Tate, and our Director of Instruction, Cadwallader, Olson, Poulin, and Steele. So my thanks to them for being here as well. As will be evident again through this brief high-level presentation, I'll be highlighting for you each of the board's strategic goals, and most notably noted successes from the past year and areas in which we are continuing to shift our focuses towards. So that is our ongoing work here. One success from this past year, and again, I'm looking at each goal separately. So the continuous improvement of instruction and assessment. One success from this past year is our Tier 2 reading intervention. And as part of addressing this strategy, student support teachers, in collaboration with their school psychologists, began implementing a press reading intervention. So that's a new intervention that we've introduced to the school district. This is a data-driven, research-based intervention designed to be implemented individually or in groups of 2 to 3 students. And what we're seeing to date, early results then, we're seeing terrific success with students reading in their growth area through this intervention. So it's nice to be able to report that back to you. A shift that we made in this area due to COVID, and this is really a positive, I would say, coming out of this, is the use of technology to support learners in an area that has required staff to make considerable shifts since the spring of last year when remote learning began. And within that then, in the months that followed, staff have continued to pivot their support for learners as they returned to the building. We built capacity around technological platforms such as Google Classroom, Google Sites, and Microsoft Teams, to name a few. And regardless of the stage of the return to school framework, we will continue to support these skills for the benefit of our learners. And what I will say is, through most of these strategies, these are interdepartmental collaborations. And I've stressed that in the past, but I want to also acknowledge the fine work that's happening through other departments to support this area for learning services. Looking forward in this area then, this year, again, we saw a significant increase in registration numbers from kindergarten to grade 12 in our distributed learning program at Island Connect Ed. And the focus moving forward in working with Island Connect Ed will be to enhance the structure and design of our learning opportunities at our distributed learning school. And another major emphasis for our supports here then are working collaboratively with the staff through the learning coordinator team, supporting the goal of designing delivery at Island Connect Ed to be consistent with all NLPS schools and programs. So this is a significant shift that we're looking at, again, supporting distributed learning as a platform and a choice option for families and students. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. The second goal area then, safe, caring, and healthy learning and working environment that is inclusive of the diversity of our entire learning community. Again, these are board strategic goals that are put forward. The focus for this area is on being safe, caring, and healthy in our learning communities was more important than ever this year. And we've had numerous discussions around this, but just the level of care and compassion that is going into having students connected and feel welcome within our schools, along with our staff at this time through this pandemic. This has been, again, a major focus of our work. Having a common understanding and approach to supporting learners with complex behavior and mental health needs is critical at this time. One success this year is the positive impact of a broader nonviolent crisis intervention training. So we've had staff very involved in this training, and this includes hosting sessions specifically for administrators, which included some coaching regarding ways to support their teams within their schools. Because 2 of our inclusion support coordinators are NVCI trainers, they have also been able to provide individual schools with training for their teams, allowing them to contextualize their learning for their own sites. So they've been able to work online with teams from schools and bring that important supports back into our students in the classroom. They've also been able to provide students with specific training for very complex learners and leading to more fulsome and supportive individualized plans for students. Another objective from this past year was the focus on supporting children in care as an initiative. And as a result of the pandemic, we broadened the scope of our work and to focus not only on children in care, but also on the many other learners who had not returned to school. And that again has been a major emphasis for us and continues to be so, or who were additionally vulnerable as a result of the pandemic. It has led to strengthened relationships with Ministry of Children and Family Development, Kwame and the Child Development Center. We've also developed data collection tools in which help us to ensure continued monitoring of these students. Also within the context of the continued work then, the structure that we've created will be enhanced and continued into the fall. So we're looking at moving through the spring here with our supports, but we recognize that it doesn't just end. So if we're back, let's say in stage 1 in the fall, we know that we have a lot of work to continue as we move through through those months. Looking ahead then, we will continue to work, and we've been doing this work with compassionate learning communities. And this will include information and support for learners through the creation of a post-pandemic roadmap. So that is something that our team is creating and will be in place for the end of this school year going into the fall. Also, we're looking at continuing learning opportunities for staff and parents, and ongoing development of resource support for classroom teachers. So that's part of the good work in making sure that students and staff feel good about the environments in which they are learning and working. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. This goal then to be a leader in environmental stewardship and sustainability, and successes that we've seen within our department and again across the system here. Cross-departmental collaboration has been a highlight for this goal, and such as involving green challenges in schools with improved systems and structures in place for making gains in reducing, recycling, and composting in partnership with our operations and facilities staff. As already has been mentioned by the Secretary Treasurer, an electric bus and an emphasis on reduced emissions throughout the district are additional examples of how NLPS is leading in environmental stewardship and sustainability. And we are very proud of the commitment that has been put forward and strengthened through the work this year, despite those challenges as have been noted through living through a pandemic. As we pivot or we make shifts here then, prior to the pandemic, schools around the district provided food security to students and families on a limited basis. Once the pandemic hit last year, food security became a priority on a much larger scale. And while working with the Nanaimo Ladysmith Schools Foundation, the district staff and students have done an incredible job in providing food for families. And this initiative carried on through the summer and continues to address food security needs within all of our schools on a larger scale. And as we look forward in this school area, a focus for this school area is going to be around promoting more outdoor education, and opportunities are associated with that, connecting students to the land through place-based learning, from small, short-term outdoor activities to deeper, longer, more in-depth outdoor programming. And this will assist students to develop a stronger sense of the connectedness and responsibility to the beautiful and precious land where we live, work, and play. And I'll move on to our fourth goal area, truth and reconciliation. And successes that we've seen this year, as was noted earlier in previous presentation, Kwame Stalequith School has been an unqualified success with an increase in enrollment to 106 students this year. It is a visible and practical example of what is possible when we, as Senator Murray Sinclair has stated, take a step on this path to reconciliation. We're very proud of the work that's occurring throughout the district again, but this is a highlight example. And as we make a shift here, we also been on the path through our work to understand and implement the CETSIS policy framework. This work continues, and there's a tremendous opportunity for us as a system to continue to grow in this area. Moving to an online delivery due to COVID last spring, we were able to create learning opportunities such as the TRC 57 speaker series, Singing with CETSIS, and most recently a workshop with all principals and vice principals on leading through the lens of CETSIS. Through this ongoing conversation with the CETSIS family, presentations to other organizations and internal workshops are heading towards CETSIS as being a process that is not easily articulated, but rather needs to be experienced. So we have great opportunity for employees within our system to experience what it actually means to be looking at CETSIS through the lens that's put forward in the framework. We're committed to continuing to provide these experiences going forward. And as we look ahead, a couple of points here then, having met our goals of increasing the number of Hulkaminam teachers, and our goal has been now met. We're looking ahead to expanding our Hulkaminam digital resource library to include more interactive video and audio resources. We have developed interactive games, beginning readers, teaching videos, and are in the process with Oceans Network of Canada toward developing a secondary science unit based on the Salish creation story. And I'm going to conclude here. Finally, we're looking forward to transitioning the students now attending at Nasika Kumtuks and Saywell programs into Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools and finding ways to support their success. And I'll wrap it up, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davey. Thank you, Ms. Trick and Mr. Walsh. I just wanted to finish the presentation by thanking the department leads and all the team members who are here this evening to answer questions. And I wanted to just finish by sharing my screen. Hope I can do this. Ms. Stanley, can you see my screen? Excellent. So in your package, you would have seen the PDF version of the operational plan, and I just wanted to bring this to your attention. It's also on the website, on the home page under the About tab. And so I'm just going to scroll through so you can see a little bit of it. Communications department did a nice job of this. So it provides the background. So a link to the strategic plan, the framework for enhancing student learning, talks a little bit about our COVID journey and why we've updated the operational plan. Has some other links in here like the CETSIS framework for community wellness during COVID-19, compassionate systems leadership, some stuff around what we're doing here with goals and objectives, strategies, measures of success. And then finally, on each goal area, it's got, so if you click on goal area 1, it brings you to our first goal. And then if you click on each of the strategies, it brings up the strategy and the indicator of success for each objective. So feel free to go to the website and see the work we've done. With that, I'll say that I know that the board itself will be looking at examining, altering, renewing their commitment to their goals and objectives, likely this summer, to renew the overall strategic plan as well. So thanks for your attention this evening.
Thank you very much to all of our presenters. Trustee Higginson has a question.
I like how you said that, like it was almost hopeful, like a question, like you know that I've got lots of questions. So I do.
Point of information, Trustee Higginson, I'm on the speaking list 3 times.
Okay, good, because I have questions. So I'll just keep putting myself back on. First off, I want to say the Salish creation story, I have goosebumps and you made me cry. So well done. So I was really relieved and happy to see the work starting on adjusting our plans because of COVID, because talk about a curveball, holy Toledo. And, you know, also reflective of the monumental amount of work that went into the first operational plan and the monumental amount of work that we've done just to have the doors open safely for COVID. And so was, you know, moved that you guys have also found time in there to start updating and adjusting the operational plan. And my first question is, how are we including student voice in those adjustments that we're making around COVID? Because I feel like our students are living an experiment right now. Last year you did this and this year you're doing this. What did you like? What didn't? And I want to make sure that we're able to capture and respond to their needs as we are making these adjustments to our operational plan, particularly as we head into budget and planning for next year. So that's my first question. How are we including student voice, like really in a meaningful way, into the plans that we're building in terms of our COVID response?
Yeah, I'll start off and then I'm going to turn it over to the Learning Services Department. Not well enough, Trustee Higginson. And we have plans to do more around including the student voice, particularly in a world where you can easily meet now, more easily with students online with technology that's, you know, we're using tonight and is relatively bulletproof. But I'll turn that over to Learning Services to give a little more developed answer.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Madam Chair, through you, I would ask maybe at the secondary level, Assistant Superintendent Balcom, or I see Mr. Cadwallader on here as well, that may be able to speak to some of the points that we're looking at in terms of engaging student voice. So, thank you.
Rank has privileges, Mr. Balcom.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, as Superintendent Saywell said, there's a lot of voice out there that we need to tap into, and I know at the school level, schools are surveying students to kind of see what's working for them and not. And through our communications department, we do have a thought exchange that's going to go out for parents. Oh, am I sounding funny to everybody or just to myself? Okay, sorry, I had a funny.
If I can interrupt, I'm just going to ask that everybody ensure that they are muted, because I think we're getting some interference, and it's not you, Don Balcom, it's otherwise.
Phil, you're
sorry.
Not muted.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, through our communications department, we are going to do a thought exchange with our parents and students around the quarter system, because the quarter system has been a big shift. It's one of those things that kind of COVID has forced, and around the province, you know, districts responded with the quarter system as a way to keep the size of our learning groups small enough to be manageable, and it's been a big shift. For staff input, it's a little easier for schools to meet with their staffs on a regular basis and get a little bit more in-depth feedback on how that's working for them. One of the areas that has been touched on, obviously, has been a huge concern, has been around students' well-being, and we often speak here of students who are feeling you know, anxious about living through a pandemic, anxious about some of the things that schools have not been able to deliver for them, and clubs and activities and field trips and outings and those rituals and ceremonies that normally take place, kindergarten through grade 12, obviously school sports and things. So there's a lot of things that COVID have hit that we need to start collecting information from students on how they've experienced this, knowing that we need to plan for, well, we've started planning already at course selections at the secondary level for the following year, and we need to take into consideration those students' bits. So schools have started gathering information from students, and we'll do the thought exchange, and then each school, they have a little, because the students are there every day, they have a little easier access to get feedback from them.
Thanks, everybody. I know I've got a delay in my on my broadband here too, so it's always a concern of whether I just see everybody frozen or it's just me being frozen. But one of our primary ways is collecting information from our students, of course, is through the Student Learning Survey. Those of you who are parents might have seen that coming out to you recently through your schools. We've got a couple of months window here where we've got feedback from grade 4, 7, 10, and 12. And that's one way that we collect it broadly. But also we have small groups of students who give us feedback. With Deputy Superintendent Davey and Assistant Superintendent Balcom, I attended a reconciliation student panel at Wellington Secondary, and as a result of their feedback and the things that they would like to do with their school, we were able to have an elder join them on Fridays moving forward for the next little while at least. And so that's another way I'd like to share, that we collect that information from students. So sometimes it's without our knowing that that's going on, but certainly at the school level, I know that our staff are continually looking for feedback from students. Even our individual Indigenous learning staff, I reach out to them and ask them about their communications ongoing with students, how they're getting feedback from students about how things are going for them. And I'm continually amazed at just the amount of ways that our staff can reach out to students and hear back from them. It's not email anymore. It's it's phone calls, it's text, it's Snapchat, it's all sorts of ways that they can stay in touch with students and find out how things are going. But I would concur with the superintendent that not nearly enough feedback from students around what it is that we're doing on our larger scale plans.
Assistant Superintendent Tate, yes.
I have very little to add. I think my colleagues have done a great job at encompassing the ways. I would actually say, however, and I don't mean to be contradictory, but I think student voice or family voice more often at the elementary level, I feel, has increased this year beyond many years in past. I think because of the situation that we're in, because of the pandemic, it has caused us to reach out, to wonder, particularly kids that were and families that we're more worried about. So we've got formal ways that we're reaching out through surveys, whether they're coming from Island Connect Ed or regular school, bricks and mortar, to parents and caregivers and to students. And we are reaching out in more ways and more often, I feel, because of the situation that we're in order to find out what people are needing and how we can support them better. So I certainly think we can always get better at that, particularly bringing in student voice into some of these decisions for sure. But I'm actually quite proud of the way that we have sort of circled around and reached out to students, parents, and families.
Thank you. Trustee Higginson, did you want to follow up on your question, or do you feel that you've got the information?
I think that was a very thorough answer, and I do agree with Assistant Superintendent Tate. I think that that's one of the really great, takeaways that we can have in terms of the way we just kind of broke down those walls that existed for reasons or not about reaching out. And it's, I felt last spring that like my kids' teachers were part of my family. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. Why am I so emotional these days? But they were part of my family. Like they knew what was happening in our house, and it was really beautiful. Like it really brought us together. And I really hope that when we do have that, we've talked about this, like we've talked tons about this. And so I'm gonna be super curious in 5 years when we are looking back to see how this impacted us. Right now we have to get through the crisis, but I am going to be super curious to see what it's like when we're 5 years from now and having that opportunity to reflect. But thank you.
Thank you. I like the momentary thought of being past this. So thank you. Trustee Robinson has a comment.
Yeah, sorry about having my mic open. I was preparing to make a quick comment and forgot I had opened the mic. Anyway, as the board representative to the Nanaimo Schools Foundation, I just wanted to make sure that this board gives them a huge pat on the back what they accomplished over last summer and their growing involvement. They're supporting the vast majority of schools with a program and I must also say with huge support from the district. They couldn't have done it on their own, but that foundation has for years done amazing work, and over the last 5 years has done extraordinary work for our students.
Thank you, Trustee Robinson. Yes, thank you for reminding us of their invaluable contribution. And when we look at needing to work on food security and the safety of our students during the pandemic, they've been, I don't know, invaluable. How do you even measure what they've done? I am on the list next, and my question, not surprisingly, is about Goal 3. When I look at the objectives of Goal 3, it's obviously very exciting to me, and I'm really happy to hear that we're going to be focusing on increasing outdoor learning spaces. One piece that's missing for me, and I actually am having a hard time understanding it. So what I hear by far the most common piece of feedback from parents is that they want learning gardens in their schools. I just received a comment from a parent. We advertised the great work at Dover and their food forest, and I got messages saying, well, why don't we have anything at these other schools? So there is questions of equity among various schools that have been asking for learning gardens for years, I hear. And when I compare that to the food security thing, please allow me to say this, which is give a student food, you feed them for a day, and teach a student to garden, and you feed them for the rest of their life. Slight modification of the saying. But I'm wondering, is there a systemic barrier? I'm genuinely confused because I said it came up in our thought exchange, constant parent feedback, but it's not in there. So is there a barrier? Is there something going on? Like, to help me understand the situation better, please.
Well, I see some people interested in responding. So perhaps you look really raring to go, Mr. Belcombe. So maybe let's go to you first.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, I'm fascinated by this topic. I think it's a great one, and I know one of the first responses when this goal kind of got traction at schools was everybody wanting a community garden. It was a very common conversation. It's like we could have a garden. That's one of the first places people thought of going outside. And when you look at it from a broader perspective, it's, do we have the facilities? Do we have the manpower from maintenance and operations and through the summer of the ideas of having gardens on site at 35 or 36 different sites. And so, there's some logistics around doing that, and the sense of, could students go to a collective community garden? So community garden may be at one school where 4 or 5 or 6 schools have access to it. So there's a lot of desire to get going on this, but there's also a lot of just logistical things that need to be taken into consideration. But you are and then of course there's the capacity. So we have all of these parents saying this would be great. We know that that having a community garden is sustainable. It can provide food. It can provide that learning on how to have a sustainable lifestyle. But we have to provide the training in place for the staff to do that and know what that would look like. And some of those facility issues around, who maintains it, who weeds it, who waters them through the summer, all of those pieces. So there's a lot those, and that's why Deputy Superintendent Davey, when he was talking about places to go for it, it's that place-based learning, and gardens is one of those things where, just getting students outside of the classroom to say, this is where the garden could be, or we're going to walk to see what a garden looks like and have some learning experiences around that. So there's lots of there's a lot of excitement shared in the system that you mentioned. So I'll leave it there and turn it over to others who I know have other comments.
I don't know, Secretary Treasurer Walsh.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. So yeah, further to Mr. Balcombe's comments as well, is that from a facilities perspective, I think that the idea is that as the food security goal or strategy, starts to mature, is where some of the structures that are going to support those gardens are going to flow from. And so rather than have like a facility shall install, we didn't contemplate that because frankly, if it's not coming from the school, I'm not sure how well it's going to be supported generally, and that was one of the discussions we're having. So what we're working on from an ops perspective is not to get in the way when the time does come, but certainly make sure that there's structures that are there to make sure that it's, it is well maintained, that because there is a bit of a worry, frankly, on the facility side that you install them, it's an interested staff member or parent, and the staff member moves on, or the parent ages out along with their child, and what happens and who's going to be responsible for maintaining that. And so we're looking forward to supporting the food security, I think, agenda, and have it mature, I guess, from the ground up, school up, so to speak.
I'll finish off by saying, through you, Madam Chair, and I've shared this with the board already, for the first time in my adult life, I had a garden for the first time last year, built a couple of garden beds, garden boxes. And so notwithstanding some of the challenges that have been presented by staff, it is my goal as well to make sure that we get these gardens in lots of our schools. And so we continue to work on that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for your response. I'll be sure to communicate that to the parents who, one was worried that her children were going to graduate before they ever had the chance to have a garden at school. So I will let them know all the words that I've just heard, which sound very encouraging. So thank you. Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. This isn't my question, but I do want to build on something that we were just talking about with the school gardens. I will tell you, probably the same parent contacted me. Honestly, I loved everything everyone just said. This school has been trying to get a garden for 6 years. Literally 6 years. The kid was in grade 1 when the parents started. So I love what we just heard. There is clearly, to Trustee Stanley's point, some kind of a systemic barrier. And as the board, I think one of the things that might be helpful is if we develop a policy around this. There are districts in the province that have school garden policies and procedures. So it's like we don't even need a policy, because I think it's part of our strategic plan. But if you want a school garden, these are the things you got to checklist, and then come to us and ask for it. Because I know that this particular parent is probably watching this and feeling even more frustrated by the answer that we just got. And it's not that you didn't give us a good answer, you did, but it's not their experience trying to get a garden at their kid's school. But my question is about our agenda on, wrong window, page, sorry, I had this all up, page 41 of the agenda, on objective number 7. It talked about building this in-house data system to support decision-making toward improved student success. That sounds super cool, and I would love to see it when it's all up and running and get a demonstration of it. And also, I think there was something that was shared with me recently by Assistant Superintendent Tate, and it was the Nlps reading screener, which is also really fabulous. And so I think the board should see all these things. And I think that we should also let parents know, show them these things, because I think that people don't know they exist. And I think it would give people great confidence in the type of learning that's happening in the classroom. Because a lot of this assessment stuff, I think, is really important to families to know that there is this this type of robust assessment of their children happening, that not only did I see, like, the NLPS reading screener kind of goes with the kid. It was really interesting stuff. So that was one. And since I have you, I love number 9 on page 42. Again, wrong thing. Page 42, number 9, support teacher collective efficacy. We know that teachers working together, okay, Scott, hold on to your hat. I'm about to quote Hattie. Teachers working together as evaluators of their own impact is one of the biggest influences in student achievement. And so I was really happy to see the efforts that we've put into creating a robust PLC system. And I'm looking forward to actually getting some more information out to families on how that works, because I think it is so important, and seeing the focus on it in our operational plan, knowing that it is one of the #1 drivers of student success, was really encouraging. So I also encourage us to get, you know, as Trustee Stanley said earlier, sing from the hilltops those particular parts of things that I think would really improve confidence in our system. So thank you for doing that. I look forward to it, and I was really impressed with all the efforts that have gone into really creating an organized and structured PLC that we know is going to have an impact on students and their learning.
Thank you, Trustee Higginson. Did I hear a question?
Can we share that information with parents, please?
Thank you. I'm back on the list, shockingly. Before I ask my question, I'm going to share a little personal anecdote. When I first ran for a trustee in North Vancouver, one of the parents that encouraged me to do it, her master's was in teacher collaboration time. And she very much talked to me about this, but her research indicated how much teachers benefited from collaboration time. So Trustee Higginson just talked about the benefits from a student perspective. Her research looked at how teachers found it incredibly rewarding and how they reported out that it supported them in not only their own learning process, but in their own kind of bonding among other teachers and social well-being. I completely agree with her comment about that particular item on the operation plan. I'm going to move to a different item though. And actually, it's not a different item necessarily. It's a different goal. Actually, it's the same goal, but not a specific item. Goal 2. No, sorry, I lied. Goal 2. It's what is missing in this for me. So I'm glad to see we're talking about, been some good work on socio-emotional learning, and I really want to support that and say continue, do more. That's great. Super important work. What is missing for me, and I also think about the grad rates, is any mention of complex learners. And so I would like to encourage us to do a little work on thinking about how we can better support unique and complex learners in our system, and have that be a bit more prevalent. It's just a piece that I noticed was missing. So I don't have a question. Really, I could fabricate one and say, where do you think it is in there? But what I'm trying to say is, you know, to be honest, it feels just like that wasn't present. And so that's just a little piece of feedback that I'm going to give. And then I'm going to go back to Trustee Higginson back to Trustee Higginson. Unless Ms.
I got it all in.
And I don't know if she wants to comment on that.
I squished it all in, so I don't need to be back on the list. I squished mine all into that last one, so.
Okay.
Chair? It seems that Director of Instruction Steele might have a response to that, Chair.
Yes, please.
Well, through the chair, I think partly what you're observing is actually it's exciting to me a little bit that we're not having separate, distinct. I mean, one of the things about the phrase special education that I was really glad to see the end of in this move towards inclusive education is that special education sounded like separate education for lots of people and in lots of environments. And I think we're working really, really hard at being really inclusive and recognizing the diversity throughout our system, creating equitable opportunities throughout our system. So what you're seeing are embedded layers of support all over the place, right? When we move to outdoor learning, when we move to compassionate approaches, when we move to tiered models of support, all of those things mean that more learners have more opportunity, more of their day, right? They're not just receiving support 3 times a week for 30 minutes in the support room. It's embedded in the ways of being in the classroom, and it's more flexible and open. So we're not using the phrase complex learners maybe in as many places as we could add it, but I actually think we could add it all over the place in lots of the goals if we chose to. What we're trying to do is focus on the key actions by the adults and the work being done systemically to provide opportunities for kids in really layered ways. So I totally hear your question. You know, literally my whole day job is taking care of those kinds of kids and their needs and their families and wrapping around things, and it's just little ripples in the pond all over everywhere, and making sure that all families have equitable access to things and are supported. So just felt like I needed to put a little plug in for the layers of the work that are happening throughout the system.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that perspective, because my comment came from a point of concern. And so I appreciate the kind of alternative perspective of how it is addressed in more seamless ways, might be a way to say it. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Trustee Keller, I indeed missed you. I apologize. In the chat, you got moved up and I didn't see it till I scrolled. So you're next on the list.
Oh, thank you. No worries. That was a great conversation and great questions too, so I don't mind waiting at all. So I had just a comment on goal 2 of our operational plan, and I'm wondering, you know, the one thing that I would really encourage us to consider is a bit of more focus on the safety aspect in relation to that goal. We have, for example, an objective related to our seismic program, which is good to see. It would also be great to have an objective related to safe and active transportation routes to schools and accessibility. So, you know, it is of late that we've received a number of concerns coming forward related to safety around the schools, and I think it is very much in line with goal number 2. And, you know, I'll just put that out there as, you know, could we consider an objective related to active and safe transportation routes to schools and accessibility?
Yeah, thanks for the question through you, Chair. A wise friend of mine once said that you can do anything you want, you just can't do everything you want. And notwithstanding, again, that's, I think, a great question from Trustee Keller, and could easily be a part of our operational plan, because we're talking about some things that aren't evident in the plan, and of course it's not all we're focusing on as well. So I see Secretary Treasurer Walsh here might want to respond to that.
Sure. I was actually just going, if it's okay, Madam Chair, was just going to relay a conversation that the superintendent and I were having, and I hope that that's okay, Superintendent, is that you know, one of the aspects for the board to contemplate stemming from the operational plan is actually the review of the objectives of the board themselves at some point. And so you know, like that alignment in order to be there, right? So the goals of the boards and the objectives, I think, are mainly the boards as well, and then the strategies and indicators of success typically are staff's way of implementing those goals. And so I think that's probably the next conversation too. So I just wanted to put a pin in that point as well, because both, you know, if that's an main objective of the board, it can come out in either the operational aspect under the generic heading of safety, or theoretically as an objective on its own accord.
Thank you,
Kelly, would you like to follow up?
No, I think the question was answered. It just raises a bigger conversation that I think would be worth having, whether that's through the upcoming long-range facilities plan, perhaps, or, you know, maybe there's a discussion around a separate project at some time related to an assessment of traffic and active transportation safety across the district. But, you know, it's just it's been on top of my mind lately, given that we've received a number of concerns, and so it'll be something that I think is worth looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put myself on last on the list, or sorry, my last item on the list. This is although I will say that I'm struggling, because Mr. Cadwallader has put a comment in the chat that is exactly along the lines of what I wanted to say. So I will dedicate this chat to you, Mr. Cadwallader. I would like to see more language, reflection of the entirely intertwinement of goal 3 and goal 4. As we work on environmental education, I mean, environmental education is about creating a greater connection to the land and an understanding of our interdependence in our ecosystem. And so it's not that it's missing, it's that I'm hoping that we can make this explicit in some ways, or just an understanding that when we work on a lot of what we talk about in goal, I think 3, it allows us to meet objectives in goal 4. And so I just wanted to highlight that piece. Yeah, I just wanted to make that point, I guess. I'm not sure if there's any need for comment on that at all. I saw Mr. Cadwallader show up there a second ago.
Chair, I can certainly respond to that. I know that we've just started on this journey of our understanding, and I know that there's that deep connection, and we say it in the acknowledgements at the beginning of this meeting. We say it in our acknowledgements at our school, and so yes, we are at the very beginnings of this journey of understanding that relationship with land. I had the opportunity this week to be out at Wildwood with the outdoor ed teacher at Ladysmith Secondary, the principal, and one of the teachers from Ladysmith Secondary, just so that they can start to forge that relationship with the eco-forest there. But also our language teachers will be going out there in February to spend a day with Nancy Turner, famed ethnobotanist on the coast who's done some work just talking about the use of plants and how language fits in there. So we are forging that relationship slowly but surely, and also looking for ways to connect our students to that world as well. But it's going to take some more time for sure.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just jump.
Sure.
Maybe I'll jump in as well through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I love the question, and we often talk about these two areas as being synonymous. And it also makes me think about the efforts that we're putting into trying to intertwine our CIETSIS framework into everything we do. And we often go to our Indigenous knowledge keepers and ask them questions about how we do that. And I'll just leave you with this, a thought that I have every now and again. I wonder where we would be today if our Indigenous brothers and sisters had led and we had followed. What would the world look like today? I wonder.
Yes, I often wonder that as well. And sometimes I feel like we need to return to that wisdom. So thank you for that indulgence. I do feel remiss in not acknowledging Assistant Superintendents Balcombe and Tate have acknowledged this previously in their presentations where they did put two goals together and show how they were related. So I will acknowledge that we've talked about this before. I believe that Trustee Barron has, I think, what is one last final question on this?
Thank you, Chair. There's so much great content in this operational plan, and I'm excited to see many of these pieces come to fruition. And I was hesitating on my questions because I kept thinking, am I missing it? Is it in here somewhere? There's a lot of details in here. I'm sure it took a lot of work and a lot of time to put this all together. And so if I could, I have two sort of items that I was hoping to ask about. I'll ask the first question and then see if I could ask the other one. I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the categorization here in the operational plan, and I'm seeing the safe, caring, and healthy learning and working environments, and lots of great strategies and indicators of success in there. But one thing I'm not seeing in here, and I'm wondering if maybe we could speak to where it fits and what we're doing, is, you know, we are in an opioid crisis right now. We have youth substance use continuing to increase, youth overdose deaths increasing, and that's very much impacting our school community. And I'm just wondering, what work are we doing? You know, where does it fit in this operational plan? Does this fit in sort of our general mental health categories? I was just wondering if we could speak a little bit to this, because it is very much a crisis that we're working with right now.
Well, I see Lynn Brown here, so over to you, Ms. Brown.
Through the chair, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you. Yes, in some ways the crisis has been exacerbated through COVID, and in a very odd way, in some cases, things have improved. And what I would like to say, first off, is we've encouraged and enjoyed a tremendous partnership with Discovery Youth and Family Substance Services. Formerly, my previous career with Island Health has forged this relationship, and the coordinator there has generated a complete menu of opportunities for teachers to select from, whereby the Discovery folk will come and facilitate discussions around safe choices, good decision making. We polled grade 5 teachers last spring, and provided them with very specific in-service around how do we start the conversation early enough, grade 5, grade 6, so that the values and the thinking happens prior to the onset of things like starting with vaping, for example. So we had something like 80 grade 5 teachers last spring talking about the iMinds curriculum out of the University of Victoria, which is all about, you know, the opposite of just say no. It's the how do we know what's good for us? Where do we land in that prior to onset of experimentation with substances? The discovery workshops that are available are suitable for grade 5 right through grade 12. We've promoted those to CLE teachers, career life educators, as well as the PHE teachers, because of course, healthy choices around substances is in the new curriculum with PHE teachers. And then we also provided an in-service for PHE teachers 3 times last year to explore all aspects of mental health, wellness, choices around wellness, and particularly around substances. Discovery will be offering a parent night for us in the end of February, which we're very excited about. And of course, we continue our wonderful relationship with NARCIF as well to support and encourage healthy conversations for parents and kids. The plus side of COVID is that I do hear about people saying to me that their teen ended up detoxing in their basement because they had nowhere to go, and that they actually interrupted some substance use in their home because the kids were basically, you know, trapped. So I hope that that gives you some idea of how complicated that picture can be.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brown. Yes, that's a beautiful way of showing how complicated the situation is. Trustee Barron, did you want a follow-up, or do you feel that was addressed?
Definitely, my question was answered, and I'm so happy to hear about all the work that's being done and the partnerships that are ongoing to address this crisis. And if I could be put back on the list for my other question, if it's possible.
I believe you are the list at this time.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you so much, Lynn. I appreciate it. My other question was just around objective number 18. And I was just hoping to get a little bit more context around the 3-year scope that you're referring to, specific to the Sequence for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity and Racism initiatives. Just to get an idea, I definitely know we don't have time to dig into a 3-year scope, but to give a general sense of what that might look like would be really helpful. Thank you.
Looks like Director of Instruction Steele is here again.
Yeah, well, it looked like Director of Instruction Olson's coming as well. We work together through the chair, we work together with the Safe Schools Advisory Committee and also with Shelley Gavoyevich, who kind of runs point on this stuff with our learning coordinators, although there's quite a few of them involved. And we do have a presentation we're pulling together for the Education Committee next week that will go into lots of this in more detail. We're at the beginning of forming the 3-year plan. We started to put something together last year, and right about when we were ready to start crystallizing some timelines and things, COVID interrupted it, and we've definitely had to pivot and look at some other supports and information to put out in the system. So we don't have a super detailed list of stuff we can even offer yet, because the goal is to have that really fleshed out by the end of this year and move forward from there. We're looking at the AP around honoring diversity and supporting racism initiatives and things right now, but there's lots of work to follow. So I don't know, Margaret, if you have other pieces you want to add on to that.
No, I think you got it, Carrie. I've got a puppy at bay here with my other hand because I was supposed to take it outside half an hour ago, so I'm a little distracted. But no, we're really excited about this work, and we're excited about the presentation that we'll be showing next week. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We are stay tuned because I do look forward to that. Trustee Barron, any follow-up?
Okay? No, looking forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of our speakers list. I will acknowledge that perhaps this was all a devious plot upon trustees just to see all of our lovely faces of our staff. It's nice to see people and feel like we still have a community, even though we experience it oftentimes through our screens. So I believe that we're going to finish up, unless Superintendent Saywell has some closing comments on this topic.
Well, okay, now that you asked through you, I would just like to also thank the team, the entire team for coming out tonight. It was nice to see everyone's face, and thanks to the board as well for some insightful questions and not making us feel we were on the spot. You saw people jump to answer the questions, and that's an indicator of something. I'm not sure what, but it feels good for trustees to have that kind of interest in the work we're doing. And as was mentioned, you know, the next part of this process is for trustees to explore the goals and objectives, and then talk to us some more about strategies and indicators of success, because ultimately it is about the conversation that happens for improvement. So thanks to everyone this evening. Thanks much.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll express on behalf of the board, thank you to all the staff as well. It was a great snapshot, actually, of the depth and breadth of the great work that we do in this district. And I'm sure that we could go on for days, but it's when you think about the, you know, we said we can't do everything, or we can't do anything, but we can't do everything. Well, we're kind of close to everything in some ways. We do a lot, and just appreciative of all the work on staff's work on this. So thank you to everyone and their teams. So we're going to move on then to Secretary Treasurer Mark Walsh is going to speak about our new, I assume, administrative procedure. At least we'll chat about that for anti-vandalism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 67 of the agenda is the item we're talking about right now. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to shut a door. Oh, having a little bit of echo on my end here. So here's an example. We had anti-vandalism policy. The board will recall passed a motion to have it go out for public consultation to delete the policy, and then we would have an AP to make sure that the fact that we're still committed to addressing vandalism is there for the public to see. But for instance, the policy suggests a committee exists for this purpose, which hasn't in a number of years. And again, the recommendation was that it would be appropriate as administrative procedure rather than a specific policy. Sent it out for public comment. We had relatively limited comments, and the ones that were there were positive, one directly positive the direction we're going, and one comment that would not be precluded from being followed in the event that we proceed to the administrative policy or procedure. So tonight the board's being asked to make the final deletion, and then we would have the AP up and ready to go tomorrow.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Walsh. Does anyone have any questions on this topic? If not, we can move. Thank you, Trustee Keller. Would you like to read the motion?
I can do that, Chair. Just a moment here, I'll pull up my screen. So the motion reads that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, delete policy 2.14, anti-vandalism, and create an administrative procedure in its place.
Thank you, and I believe Trustee Higginson is seconding that motion. Is there any debate on the motion? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's any opposition to the motion. Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are going to move on to, new business. And this is under Trustee McKay, Chair McKay, so I will do my best. We have had a discussion previously about the proposed bid for the 2026 BC Summer Games. Perhaps Secretary Treasurer Walsh will come back to us and give us some additional background information.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. So you'll notice this is a little bit, it differs a little bit from our normal procedures in the sense that there's a staff memo without a staff recommendation, and then there's a trustee motion under new business. I think due to the priority nature and the specific request from our partners at Nanaimo, it's coming directly to the board. But we thought for the purposes of the board's discussion, in the event that the board moves the motion, that we would provide a little bit of background with respect to the request. More specifically with respect to the potential costs of supporting summer games. So in the memo, it outlines what the board has done in the past. The board has been a big supporter of summer games in the past and giving significant in-kind contributions to support the games. In addition, as I understand it, to having a very large amount of our staff volunteering, including our superintendent, above and beyond his work day. So we've just provided again the memo that was provided to the board with respect to the previous costs of the games, as well as what the work we've done to determine what other districts are doing. And so you'll see that the motion, and it appears the motion that's being recommended by the chair is slightly different than the one being requested by the mayor, in the sense that it says a recovery of a direct costs. And the direct costs that would be in the circumstances are not lost rental revenue, are not custodial that would have been on the site anyway. The costs are specifically associated with the fact that during the last games, yes, we donate our buses at no cost for the rental of the buses, but we would still have to pay the bus drivers. They wouldn't normally be working at those times, so that's a direct cost of to the board. That's an example. The gas for the buses is another example, etc. So the direct costs are very limited in nature and would likely be along the lines of the previous one, where extra custodial that wouldn't be on site anyway is called in. We did charge for vandalism damages to our sites because the students would be sleeping in probably most of our facilities, and again, as well as those costs of the bus driver call out. And then all of the in-kind costs would not be charged in any way. So the board would be one of the largest, if not the largest, single contributor locally to the games, along with Nanaimo, of course.
Thank you very much. I see Trustee Berzovich is wanting to move the motion, or a motion. I won't make an assumption about that.
I will move the motion as written. I confess I tried to get it open on my computer on a separate screen, so if somebody wants to read it for me, I'd appreciate it, but I would move the motion as presented in the agenda.
Sure. I believe Trustee Barron is seconding the motion as written, so I'm going to see if she's got it ready to read out. If not, I do.
Yes, could you just tell me what page it's on?
4.
Page 4?
Yes.
All right,
at the very top.
It. that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, have the district provide facilities and equipment in support of the City of Nanaimo's 2026 Summer Games, contingent on availability and at no direct cost to the board.
And I'll speak to it if it's seconded, yes. As I remember the last time that the Summer Games were here in Nanaimo, and I know some young people who were in it, and it is just such an incredibly powerful experience for them. And I think there's lots of good research on the positive mental health impact of both sports and arts, but in this case, sports for young people. So I think anything that we can do that provides support to the variety of interests for our youth and looks and supports them in ways that go beyond the academic, because there is more to education and more to being a human being than academic education. So I think this fits in with our goals. I think it's a terrific project, and I think it will be of great benefit to our community. And I think we should support the city as in partnership with them. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Trustee Bruce.
Sorry, I'm not reaching that point.
And does anybody else want to have a comment or ask a question on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there any opposition to the motion as moved and as in the agenda? Seeing no opposition, the motion passes unanimously. And we move on to 15.2, which is about the BC School Life Cycle Funding Report. And I believe that Chair McKay was looking to get trustee feedback on this to see if there was any discussion that occurred publicly. I'm not sure if anyone has any comments. I see the word point. I'm not sure what.
Well, Chair, may I? I'm having a tough time writing aside from putting the couple little GIFs in the comment section here. I had a question on that piece, and I just wondered, because Chair McKay isn't at tonight's meeting, I'm just wondering if this is something that's time sensitive or if we should refer this to the next meeting, specifically if it's something that we need a bit of more information on, and perhaps if you don't have an answer to that, someone on staff would. Thank you.
I will look to staff or anyone who has information about the time requirements on this. Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. This is the BCSTA paper on life cycles, and I think the feedback is due by the end of the month, and that is why it's on the agenda. So I guess I know that the VISTA board chairs are meeting on Friday to talk about it at 2. So maybe just if people have feedback, they could provide it to all trustees, to Chair McKay, so everybody can see each other's feedback and they don't overload her if it's already been said. And Chair McKay can figure, I guess she can ask one of us to help her if she needs some help on collating that and getting it in on time.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, you mean like is in 4 days into this month?
I believe so, yeah. I don't know the exact date, but it's like, I think it's the end of the month, yeah.
Okay.
There's a meeting on Friday. There's a chairs meeting on Friday with the executive and Vista. Yeah. And at 2 o'clock, I believe.
Okay. Okay, so unless anybody has any particular, I see there's a question. Go ahead, Trustee O'Neill.
So perhaps I'm getting a little tired here. I just see this as something that maybe doesn't need to be actioned right now, but that there can be some follow-up. I just hate for it for those any timelines to pass. So if am I hearing that the trustees can sort of follow up between now and Friday with the chair to express any representation that we want at the Vista meeting? And then my follow up to that would be, do we need to do any sort of formal motion or just have that record that that's the action we're going to take as a board?
So I believe that Chair McKay was just looking. Let me finish this and I'll get to the point of clarification. Chair McKay was looking for feedback on the report. So that is something, as Trustee Higginson just recommended, that we could do via email, and I believe that the reply all function would be indeed useful, just so we have an understanding of the feedback. And then the purpose of this item will still be addressed, as the feedback will be sent to Chair McKay. I'm going to go to Trustee Higginson for her point of clarification at this point in time.
It's just the Vista meeting isn't when the stuff is due by. It just happens to also going to be discussed there. But it's due back to BCSTA by the end of the month. So our board can provide their feedback to Chair McKay, who can then, you know, she has it in time for Vista, but also that it's not so time sensitive that it's by Friday. So just so people don't feel super scrunched to do it by Friday or not.
Right. And so for Vista, if we needed to give feedback to Tanya, which it doesn't appear that's the priority, that would be by Friday at 2. If not, we have the weekend to send our information and feedback to Chair McKay. Trustee Berzovich.
Yes, and still send it to Chair McKay regardless, because it's technically a chairs meeting. It's the Vista board, it's the board chairs with the Vista exec, so Chair McKay really should be representing us in that context at that meeting. And the only reason that I was suggesting trying to have it for that is that I know that Trustee Spilsbury from District 79, who's the president of Vista, was going to collate something from Vista as well. Okay. I don't know why. I don't recall why, but I recall that there was talk of the board chair from the board chairs meeting making a submission from Vista itself. I don't know, but that's what that's what I recall. I don't recall the details, but I do remember hearing that.
Okay, so I believe that we can move on from this with clear direction that if trustees want to provide feedback, that goes to Chair McKay. And that the deadline ultimately is the end of this weekend, which is the end of this month. Moving on. Vandalism report is there for your information, as is the board motion. It is getting late, I can't speak anymore. Board motions report and trustee committee reports. I don't, just gonna check, see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions in our Q&A. I'm gonna check with Ms. Matthews to see if there's anything. Great, there's no questions. So unless there's any objection, can somebody please submit a motion to adjourn? Trustee Wilkinson puts forward the motion, seconded by Trustee O'Neill. Is there any opposition for calling it a night? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much at 8:35. Good night, all.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, staff, for the great reports. Thank you.
Thanks.